My name is Samantha Reed. I am 28 years old and I'm from Houston, Texas. And let me tell you, the day I got married, I thought I was gaining a new family. Instead, I lost my own father because he couldn't accept the man I loved. Have you ever been so in love that you were willing to lose everything for it? What would you do if your rich CEO father looked you in the eyes on your wedding day and said, "If you marry him, you're dead to me"? Would you walk away from your husband to keep your lifestyle, or walk away from your father to keep your dignity? And what happens when the same father who cut you off like you were nothing comes crawling back just 6 months later, begging your poor husband for a business deal? Stay till the end because karma showed up in a suit. I still remember the way the chandelier lights hit the marble floor that day. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. The venue was one of those ridiculous luxury places, white roses everywhere, a live string quartet playing soft music, and guests dressed like they were attending some celebrity gala instead of my wedding. My father paid for all of it, of course, not because he was proud, but because he wanted control. He wanted to remind everyone, including me, that this wedding wasn't about love. It was about the image of the CEO's daughter, the daughter he treated like an investment. And I should have known from the beginning that the moment I stopped behaving like one, he'd try to destroy me. I stood in front of the mirror in the bridal suite, staring at myself in a gown worth more than some people's cars. The makeup artist kept telling me I looked like royalty, but my stomach was twisting, not because I was nervous about marrying the love of my life. I was nervous about what my father would do. Because for weeks he had been warning me, not gently, not lovingly, but like a man threatening a business partner who was about to breach contract. He had said it again just 2 nights before the wedding. "You marry that man," he told me, eyes cold, voice flat, "and you're done. You will not get 1 penny from me. You will not use my name. You will not step foot in my home again." I laughed nervously back then, trying to act like he was exaggerating. But he didn't blink. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look angry. He looked calm, the way powerful men look when they know they can crush you without effort. And still, I went through with it. Because when you love someone, really love them, you stop caring about fear. You stop caring about money. You stop caring about what people whisper behind your back. And my fiancé, my husband now, was the one person in my life who never made me feel like a trophy. He never cared about my father's name, never asked about inheritance, never once treated me like I was something he could gain. He loved me like I was human, and for me, that was everything. But the moment I stepped outside the bridal suite, the tension hit me like a slap. The hallway was quiet, but I could hear muffled voices from the main hall. Laughter, champagne glasses clinking. My father's voice, loud and confident. He was probably already holding court, telling people how much the wedding cost, how successful he was, how lucky everyone was to be in his presence. That was his favorite part, not my happiness, not my future, his performance. When the doors opened and I walked down the aisle, everyone stood, the music swelled, people smiled, cameras flashed. I locked eyes with my husband at the altar, and for a moment I felt peace. He looked so handsome in his suit, not a designer one, not tailored by some overpriced fashion house. Just simple, clean, and elegant, but he wore it like he belonged there, like he wasn't intimidated, like he wasn't surrounded by people silently judging him, and I knew they were. Because the whispers had already started months ago. She could have married anyone. Why would she choose him? He's not in her league. He's probably after her father's money. Even my own relatives acted like he was some temporary mistake I'd eventually outgrow. But he never flinched, and I loved him more for that. We said our vows, and I swear the world disappeared. It was just us, his hands trembling slightly as he held mine. My voice cracking when I promised forever. And when he said, "I choose you, even if the world turns against us," I almost cried, because he didn't know how accurate that was about to be. When the officiant announced us husband and wife, the room erupted into applause. People cheered. The string quartet played louder, and I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe my father wouldn't ruin this. Maybe he would see how happy I was and soften. Maybe he'd accept it. But then we walked down the aisle together as a married couple, and that's when I saw my father. He was standing near the front row, his hands behind his back, looking like he was watching a business presentation. Not his daughter's wedding. He didn't clap. He didn't smile. He didn't even pretend. And the moment my eyes met his, I felt something sink inside me, like my chest dropped, like I was about to lose something I didn't know I still hoped for. After the ceremony, the reception started. People danced, ate, drank, and laughed. My husband and I tried to enjoy ourselves, but it was impossible. Everywhere we went, there were eyes, judging, measuring, calculating, and then the moment happened. The moment I will never forget for the rest of my life. My father stood up. He tapped his glass with a spoon. The entire room went quiet. Even the band stopped playing. My heart started pounding because I knew what was coming. I could feel it. My father walked toward the microphone like he owned the air in the room. He smiled at the crowd, charming as ever. The same smile that made investors trust him. The same smile that made people believe he was a family man. Then he looked directly at me, and my husband. And he said calmly, "I'd like to make a toast." Everyone smiled. Some people clapped lightly. My husband squeezed my hand. Then my father continued, "To my daughter who has made her choice." The room went tense. Like everyone suddenly remembered the rumors. My father tilted his head slightly, like he was disappointed. "I raised her with everything," he said. "Education, privilege, opportunity, a future most people can only dream of." I could feel my cheeks burning. Then he glanced at my husband. And the way he looked at him, it wasn't anger. It was disgust, like he was looking at dirt on an expensive shoe. "But she decided to throw it all away," my father said, voice steady, "for a man who cannot provide what she deserves." I heard gasps, actual gasps. And my husband's grip tightened, but he didn't move. He didn't react. He just stared forward, calm, like he expected it, and that somehow made it worse. Then my father said the sentence that destroyed me. "If you married him today, you are no longer my daughter." The silence was deadly. People froze. Forks paused midair. A woman near the back whispered, "Oh my God." My breath caught in my throat. My vision blurred, and I looked around, waiting, hoping someone would stop him. That someone would say, "This is wrong." But no one did, because my father wasn't just rich, he was powerful, and everyone in that room was either scared of him or benefiting from him. My father continued like he was announcing a company merger. "Starting today, I will not support her financially. She will not receive inheritance. She will not use my family name for any advantage." Then he looked at me and said, "You made your bed, now lie in it." My legs felt weak. I couldn't even speak. I wanted to scream, cry, run. But my husband stepped forward slightly, and in a calm, respectful voice he said, "Sir, with all due respect, we don't need your money." That's when my father laughed, actually laughed. He leaned closer to the microphone and said, "You will." Then he walked away like he had just won, and the room slowly filled with murmurs again, people pretending nothing happened. People returning to their plates like my life hadn't just been ripped apart. I stood there in my wedding dress, white, glowing, expensive, and I felt completely abandoned. And the worst part, my father didn't even look back. Not once. That was the moment I realized something chilling. He didn't cut me off because he hated my husband. He cut me off because I chose someone I couldn't control him through, and that scared him more than anything. That night, while everyone danced, I held my husband's hand and forced a smile. But inside, I was shattered, because I didn't just lose financial security, I lost the illusion that my father ever loved me in the first place. And I had no idea yet that this humiliation was only the beginning. The morning after my wedding didn't feel like a honeymoon. It felt like a funeral. Not because my marriage was wrong, but because my old life was already dead, and I could feel it in the air. I woke up in a hotel suite my father had booked, still in shock from what happened the night before. My wedding dress was folded over a chair like a ghost of the girl I used to be. The makeup wipes were on the counter, smudged with mascara tears I didn't even remember crying. My husband was still asleep beside me, peaceful, like he didn't have a care in the world. And for a second, I hated how calm he looked. Not because he did anything wrong, but because I was the one who understood what my father's words truly meant. When my father says he'll cut someone off, he doesn't mean it emotionally. He means it strategically. He means it like a CEO firing an employee and blacklisting them from the industry. And I knew my life was about to become a nightmare. I got out of bed quietly and walked to the window. Outside, the city looked normal. People driving to work, coffee shops opening, life continuing. Meanwhile, I felt like my entire world had been pushed off a cliff. I checked my phone. No messages. No good morning, sweetheart from my mom. No, I'm sorry about your father from any family member. Nothing. I told myself they were still asleep. I told myself maybe they were embarrassed. Maybe they'd come around, but deep down, I knew they wouldn't. Because when a man like my father draws a line, everyone stands behind him, even if he's wrong. I walked back to the bed, sat on the edge, and watched my husband sleeping. I wanted to wake him up and tell him everything would be okay, but I didn't even believe it myself. Then my phone buzzed, a notification. Bank alert, transaction declined. I froze. I blinked, thinking it was a mistake. I hadn't even tried to buy anything. Then I realized it wasn't my transaction. It was the hotel deposit. My father's card had been on file. And it had just been declined. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I immediately opened my banking app, and my heart almost stopped. My accounts were still there, but the balance was different. Not just different, it was drained. Every joint account linked to my father was frozen. Every trust account I had access to, locked. My credit cards, all marked inactive. Even my emergency card, the one I kept hidden, was shut down. It was like my father had reached into my life with invisible hands and turned everything off, like flipping a switch. I whispered, "No." My hands started shaking. I refreshed the screen again and again, like the numbers would magically change. They didn't. Then another notification came. Email, account access, revoked. I opened it. It was from my father's company. My corporate email had been disabled. My building access badge, canceled. My position, my job, gone just like that. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I wasn't just cut off, I was erased. And then my phone rang. It was my mother. For a moment, hope rushed into my chest. Maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe she was going to tell me my father was just angry and would calm down. Maybe she was going to be a mother. I answered instantly. "Mom," her voice cut through me like ice. "Your father is serious," she said. No greeting, no softness, just business. I swallowed. "Mom, did you hear what he said last night?" In front of everyone. "Yes," she replied like she was discussing weather. My voice cracked. "How could you let him do that? That was humiliating." There was a pause. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "You humiliated him first." I didn't even understand what I was hearing. "What?" I whispered. She sighed like she was tired of me. "You married a man beneath you. Your father built a legacy, and you chose that. That." She called my husband that. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. "Mom, he's my husband. And your father is still your father," she snapped. "But you made your choice." I felt tears sting my eyes. "So that's it?" I asked. "You're just going to abandon me too?" Her voice softened slightly, not out of love but out of caution. "You can still fix this," she said. "If you come home right now and apologize, your father might reconsider. He might still accept you back." I laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was that kind of laugh people make when they're on the edge of breaking. "You mean if I leave my husband?" I said. She didn't answer, and that silence was louder than any scream. My chest tightened. I wanted to beg her. I wanted to remind her that I was her daughter, that I was the little girl who used to sit on her lap, that I used to hold her hand, that I used to believe she loved me, but she wasn't calling because she missed me. She was calling because my father told her to, because she was his messenger. I whispered, "So you're choosing him too?" She exhaled sharply. "Don't make this dramatic." I felt rage rising. Dramatic. My entire life had been ripped away in less than 12 hours. And she had the nerve to call me dramatic. "I have nothing now," I said. "No money, no job, no family." Her tone became colder again. "You have your husband," she said. "That's what you wanted, right? Love. Well, congratulations. Now you can live like him." That's when I broke. Tears spilled down my face so fast I couldn't stop them. I whispered, "Mom, how can you talk to me like that?" Her voice lowered. "You're not a child anymore," she said. "Actions have consequences." Then she added the final knife. "And don't call me again until you're ready to come back and do the right thing." And she hung up, just like that. No goodbye. No, "I love you." Nothing. I sat there staring at the phone screen like it was going to light up again. It didn't. My husband woke up a few minutes later and immediately noticed my face. "Hey, what happened?" he asked, sitting up. I couldn't even speak at first. I just handed him my phone. He looked at the bank alerts, the locked accounts, the canceled cards, the disabled email. His expression didn't change much, but his eyes darkened slightly. He took a slow breath. Then he looked at me and said quietly, "So he actually did it." I nodded, my voice trembling. "I don't have anything anymore," I whispered. "He took everything." My husband reached for my hands, and the warmth of his palms made me cry harder. He said softly, "No, he took what he gave you." Then he leaned closer, looking straight into my eyes. "But he didn't take what you earned." I sniffled. "What do you mean?" He smiled, just a little. The kind of smile that wasn't comforting, it was confident, almost dangerous. "You think I didn't know this was coming," he said calmly. "You think I married you without preparing for war," my breath caught. Because the way he said war, it wasn't dramatic. It was real. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Because for the first time since the wedding, I realized I wasn't trapped. I wasn't ruined. I was just finally free. Free from my father's money, free from his control. But also, standing at the edge of a life I didn't know how to survive. And as my husband pulled me into his arms, I could feel it. This wasn't the end of my story. This was the beginning of my revenge. Because if my father thought cutting me off would break me, he had no idea what he just created. After my father cut me off, I expected panic. I expected stress. I expected my husband to sit on the edge of the bed and say, "What are we going to do?" Because that's what normal people do when they suddenly lose everything. But my husband, he didn't panic. Not even a little. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pace around the room. He didn't even look surprised. He just sat there calmly, rubbing his thumb over my knuckles, like my father cutting me off was predictable. And that terrified me more than anything, because I realized something in that moment. Either my husband was the most emotionally stable man on earth, or he knew something I didn't. We packed our things quietly. The hotel front desk kept calling because the card on file wasn't working anymore. I could feel their judgment through the phone, like they already knew I was the CEO's daughter who got disowned. I felt humiliated all over again. But my husband walked to the counter like he belonged there. He paid with a simple card, no hesitation, no awkwardness, and the weird part, the receptionist's attitude changed instantly. Like she recognized something, or someone, I didn't understand it. Maybe I was just imagining things. But as we walked out, I glanced back and saw her whispering to another employee while staring at my husband like she had seen a ghost. My heart started pounding. "What was that?" I asked. My husband shrugged casually. "Nothing. Nothing." That's what he kept saying, always nothing, like he was trained to hide things. When we got home, his home, technically, I finally saw reality. I had been living in penthouses, luxury condos, and homes with staff since I was a child. But my husband's place was small, not dirty, not messy, just simple. A quiet apartment in a normal building. No doorman, no marble floors, no grand staircase, just a living room, a kitchen, a bedroom, and silence. And the silence was loud. The first night, I sat on the couch staring at the walls, feeling like I had been dropped into someone else's life. I kept thinking about my father's face at the wedding. That cold smirk. That confidence. He didn't just cut me off to punish me. He did it because he believed I'd come crawling back, because he believed I wouldn't survive without him. And honestly, part of me feared he was right. I turned to my husband. He was in the kitchen making tea, calm as ever, like we were just having a normal evening. I couldn't take it anymore. How are you so okay right now? I asked, my voice sharp. He looked over his shoulder. What do you mean? I stood up, frustration rising in my chest. I mean, I just lost everything. My father disowned me. My mom basically told me I'm dead to her. I have no money, no job, no safety net. My voice cracked. And you're just making tea like this is nothing. He walked over slowly, setting the mug down on the coffee table. Then he sat beside me. His eyes were calm, steady, almost too steady. And he said quietly, because it is nothing. I blinked. What? He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. Your father wants you scared, he said. He wants you desperate. Because desperation makes people easy to control. I swallowed hard. You sound like you've dealt with him before, I whispered. My husband didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at the floor like he was debating whether to say something. Then he looked at me and smiled, not sweetly, not lovingly, but like someone who knew a secret that could destroy an entire room. He said softly, "Let him think he won." A chill ran down my spine, because the way he said it, it wasn't hopeful. It was strategic, like revenge. I stared at him. "Who are you?" I asked, half joking, but he didn't laugh. He reached for my hand again, and that's when I noticed something. His hands weren't rough like I assumed they would be. They weren't the hands of a man who struggled paycheck to paycheck. They weren't the hands of someone working endless shifts just to survive. His hands were clean, strong, controlled, the hands of someone who didn't do physical labor, someone who sat in offices, someone who signed papers, someone who made decisions. I pulled my hand back slightly. My heart started racing. "You told me you worked in logistics," I said. He nodded. "I do. But you never talk about it," I pressed. He smiled again. "I don't like bringing work home." That answer felt rehearsed, like he'd said it before, like he was trained to keep his life private. The next morning, I woke up early and saw something that made my stomach flip. My husband was on the balcony on the phone, but it wasn't a casual phone call. His voice was low, sharp, commanding. And I heard him say words that didn't match the poor husband image at all. "Move the assets quietly." Pause. "No, don't let them trace it back." Another pause. "If they push, I want the contract rewritten. Today." I froze in the hallway, my breath caught. What assets? What contract? Who talks like that? My husband ended the call and turned around. The moment he saw me, his face softened instantly. Like a switch flipped, he walked inside and kissed my forehead. "Good morning," he said gently. I just stared at him. "You were on a business call," I said slowly. He nodded like it was nothing. "Yeah." "With who?" I asked. He poured coffee into a mug calmly. "Just my team." I laughed nervously. "Team?" I repeated. "What team? I thought you worked for a company." He took a sip, completely unbothered. "I do." My heart started pounding harder. I wasn't sure if I was being paranoid, but something felt off. That day, we went grocery shopping, and this is where it got worse. Because when we walked into the store, my husband didn't check prices. Not once. He didn't hesitate. He didn't calculate. He just grabbed what he wanted: organic food, premium brands, imported coffee. The kind of things people don't buy when they're broke. I stared at the cart like it was filling itself. Finally, I leaned close and whispered, "Baby, we should be careful. We don't have my father's money anymore." He looked at me and smiled like I was adorable. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. "We were never depending on your father's money." My throat went dry. "What do you mean?" I asked. He pushed the cart forward calmly. "I mean, I married you for you," he said, "not for your father. And I don't need his approval or his bank account." Then he paused, looked me dead in the eyes, and added, "And I don't need his fear either." That night, I couldn't sleep. Because I kept replaying everything: the receptionist staring at him, the phone call about assets, the word team, the way he walked with confidence in every room, like he belonged anywhere. Like he wasn't afraid of anyone, like he had power, real power. I finally sat up in bed and looked at him sleeping beside me. He looked peaceful, but now I wasn't comforted. I was suspicious. Because suddenly, I realized something terrifying. My father wasn't the only man in my life who knew how to play the game. My husband was playing one too. And I had a feeling I had married a man my father should have been afraid of, and I didn't even know his real story yet. At first, nothing happened, and honestly, that was the scariest part. Because after my father disowned me, I kept waiting for the world to punish him. I kept expecting lightning to strike the mansion, the company's stock to collapse overnight, or at least for someone to finally stand up and call him out. But no, life kept moving. His company kept shining, his name kept getting praised, and I kept feeling like I was the only one bleeding. For weeks, I was stuck in this weird emotional fog. I'd wake up in my husband's small apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had ruined my entire future for love. And then I'd remind myself, no, I didn't ruin it. My father did. Still, it hurt, because the truth was, even though I hated what my father did, a part of me still wanted him to regret it. Not for revenge, not for money, but for closure, for proof that I mattered. But my father wasn't the type of man who regretted anything. He was the type of man who rewrote reality until he was always the hero. And for the first few months, he seemed completely fine. Too fine. I didn't hear from him, not once, not even a text, not even a warning. It was like I had never existed. Then, one afternoon about 3 months after the wedding, I got my first sign. I was scrolling through my phone on the couch, trying to distract myself, when I saw an article pop up. It was from a major business news outlet. The headline said, CEO Charles Whitmore faces backlash after sudden board restructuring. My heart stopped. Charles Whitmore, my father. I clicked so fast my fingers trembled. The article was written in that careful corporate tone, polite, professional, but the message underneath was clear. Something was wrong. Apparently, my father had removed 2 long-term board members without warning. Investors were concerned. Executives were resigning unexpectedly, and the company's stock had dipped slightly. Not a crash, just a dip, but even that was unusual. My father's company was known for stability, for dominance, for being untouchable. I read the article twice. Then I stared at the screen like it was going to explain itself further. My husband walked into the room and glanced at my face. "What's wrong?" he asked. I held the phone up slowly. "My dad's company, something happening." He read the headline. His expression didn't change. He didn't look shocked. He didn't look concerned. He just nodded once, like someone confirming a prediction. "That makes sense," he said casually. That's when I snapped my head toward him. "What do you mean that makes sense?" he shrugged. "Men like him don't fall because of one big mistake. They fall because of a pattern." A pattern. That word stuck in my mind. Because my father's entire life was built on patterns. Control. Manipulation. Intimidation. Public perfection. Private cruelty. He didn't run his company like a business. He ran it like a kingdom. And he ran his family the same way. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I kept watching. And that's when the rumors started spreading like wildfire. At first, it was small whispers from people who used to be my father's friends. One of my old college classmates messaged me randomly, not to check on me, not to apologize, but to gossip. "Hey, are you okay? I heard your dad is dealing with some serious financial trouble." I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Financial trouble? My father? That didn't even sound real. I replied carefully, "What do you mean?" They responded almost immediately. "People are saying he lost a huge contract overseas, like a massive one." My stomach twisted. I didn't respond. Because suddenly I could feel it. The cracks weren't just appearing, they were spreading. A week later, I overheard 2 women talking while I was at a coffee shop. They were dressed in expensive clothes, the kind of women who always know what's happening in high society. One of them whispered, "Apparently the company's being investigated." The other gasped. "No way." "Yes," she said. "Some kind of fraud, something about hidden accounts." Fraud, hidden accounts. My throat went dry. I stood there holding my coffee like it weighed 100 pounds. My father always told people he was honest. He always said his success was built on integrity. But I knew him better than anyone, and my father's integrity had always been selective. The next month, the headlines got worse. Whitmore Industries faces lawsuit over breach of contract. Anonymous insider claims CEO manipulated financial reports. Major investor pulls out, stock drops 18%. 18%. I stared at the number in disbelief. My father's company wasn't supposed to drop. It was supposed to rise endlessly. It was supposed to be his empire. And now, the empire was shaking. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me felt satisfaction, not joy but something darker. Like karma was finally stepping into the room with a calm smile, but another part of me felt sick. Because no matter how cruel my father was, I still grew up watching him build that company. I still remembered him carrying me on his shoulders through the office hallways when I was little. I still remembered him telling me, "One day this will all be yours." And now it was crumbling, but he had chosen this. He chose power over love, and now power was slipping from his hands. Then came the moment that made everything feel real. I got a call from my aunt, my father's sister. We hadn't spoken since the wedding, not once. So the fact that she was calling me at all made my heart pound. I answered hesitantly. "Aunt Diane," her voice sounded tense. "Listen," she said quickly, like she didn't want anyone to overhear. "I know what your father did was unforgivable, but I need you to be careful." My grip tightened. "What are you talking about?" She paused. Then she whispered, "Your father is desperate." Desperate. That word sent a chill through my entire body. My aunt continued, "He's losing control of the company, the board is turning against him. Investors are pulling out, and he's been acting unstable." Unstable. My father didn't act unstable, he acted calculated, cold, sharp. So hearing that word connected to him felt like watching a lion bleed. I swallowed hard. "And why should I be careful?" I asked. My aunt hesitated again. Then she said, "Because he blames you." My blood ran cold. "What?" She spoke faster now. "He thinks you leaving ruined his reputation. He thinks you embarrassed him publicly. And now that things are falling apart, he needs someone to blame." My heart started racing. That wasn't surprising. My father never accepted responsibility. He assigned it. He distributed it like punishment. My aunt's voice softened slightly. "I'm telling you because I care," she said. "He's been asking questions about you, about your husband. About where you live." My throat tightened. I glanced toward the kitchen where my husband was washing dishes, completely calm, like he didn't have a clue the storm was approaching. "Why would he care about my husband?" I asked. My aunt's voice lowered even more. "Because," she whispered, "your father's running out of options. He's burned bridges. And now he needs a miracle." A miracle. And suddenly I understood. My father didn't want me back. He didn't miss me. He didn't regret disowning me. He only cared because his empire was collapsing. And the man he mocked, the man he called poor, was standing beside me like a wall he couldn't break. When I hung up the phone, I sat there frozen. My hands were shaking. My stomach was twisting. Because I could feel it. The next phase of the story was coming, and my father wasn't going to come gently. He was going to come like a man drowning. A man willing to grab anyone around him just to stay afloat. I turned toward my husband. He looked up from the sink, noticed my expression, and immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked calmly. I swallowed. "My dad's company is falling apart," I said quietly. My husband dried his hands slowly. Then he walked over, leaned down, and whispered in my ear. "Good." I froze, because that one word, that one single word, it wasn't said with hatred. It was said like a man watching a plan unfold exactly the way it was designed. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. My husband wasn't just watching my father collapse. He was waiting for it. And the scariest part, it felt like he had been waiting a long time. It happened on a Tuesday, not some dramatic holiday, not some big corporate event. Just a normal Tuesday morning, like the universe wanted to prove something. I was sitting at the kitchen table in my husband's apartment, sipping coffee from a mug that didn't match any of the others. The sunlight was coming in through the blinds, casting quiet lines across the floor. Everything felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. Then the knock came, 3 knocks, slow, heavy. The kind of knock that doesn't ask permission. The kind of knock that assumes the door will open. My heart instantly dropped into my stomach. Because something in my body knew who it was before my mind could accept it. My husband looked up from his laptop, calm as ever. He didn't jump, didn't flinch, didn't even look surprised. He just closed the laptop slowly, like he had all the time in the world. I swallowed. "Are you expecting someone?" He shook his head once. Then he stood up, walked toward the door, and said in a quiet voice, "Stay seated." That should have been my first clue, not "who is it?" Not "let's check." Just stay seated, like he already knew. Like he already understood what kind of person was standing outside. The second he opened the door, I heard a voice I hadn't heard in months. A voice that used to fill boardrooms. A voice that used to control my entire life. My father. "Hello," he said, smooth and controlled. And for a second I didn't recognize him. Not because it wasn't his face, but because the energy was wrong. My father always carried himself like a king, shoulders back, chin lifted, eyes sharp, but now he looked smaller. Still wearing an expensive suit, of course, still polished, still trying to look powerful, but his eyes were tired, his jaw was tense, and there was something else there. Something I had never seen on him before. Fear. My husband didn't move aside, he didn't welcome him in, he didn't even greet him politely, he just stood in the doorway like a wall. "Yes?" my husband asked. My father's eyes shifted past him and landed on me sitting at the table. For a moment, the room went silent. I didn't stand up. I didn't smile. I didn't say "Dad," because I wasn't his daughter anymore, remember? Not according to him. My father cleared his throat and stepped forward slightly. "I'm here to speak with you," he said. He was looking at my husband, not me, and that stung more than I expected. Even now, he couldn't bring himself to address me. My husband nodded slightly. "About what?" he asked. My father hesitated. I saw it, a tiny crack in his confidence. Then he said the words that made my blood turn cold. "May I come in? May I come in?" That man had never asked anyone for permission in his entire life. He was the type to enter rooms like he owned them. And now he was standing at my husband's door, asking politely like a stranger. My husband didn't answer immediately. He just stared at him for a long moment. Then he stepped aside slightly. Not welcoming, not friendly, just allowing. My father walked in slowly, his eyes scanning the apartment. And I swear, I could see the judgment trying to form on his face, but he swallowed it down. Because he couldn't afford arrogance today. He needed something, and he knew it. My father straightened his tie, then looked at my husband. "You have a nice place," he said, forcing a compliment. My husband nodded. "It's enough." My father's lips tightened. I could tell he hated that response, because my husband wasn't playing his game. My husband wasn't impressed by the suit, wasn't intimidated by the title, wasn't bowing. My father cleared his throat again, then he finally looked at me. His eyes flickered with something, almost regret, almost, but not quite. Then he spoke. "I heard you've been doing well," he said. I almost laughed. Doing well, after he destroyed my life, after he cut me off and turned my own mother against me. I didn't answer, and honestly, that silence was the best revenge. My father shifted uncomfortably, then he turned back to my husband like he couldn't handle my eyes. "I'll get straight to the point," he said, and here it came. This was it, the moment. He took a deep breath and his voice dropped lower. "My company is facing complications." Complications, that's what he called it. Not collapse, not disaster, not failure, complications. Because even now, he couldn't admit he was drowning. He continued, "There's a deal I need to secure, a partnership, an investor. Something that can stabilize things." My husband leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "And you came here because?" he asked calmly. My father's jaw tightened. Then he said it. "I was told you might be able to help." I felt my heart slam against my ribs, because that sentence was insane. My father, the man who humiliated my husband at our wedding, the man who called him nothing, was now saying he was told my husband might be able to help. My husband raised an eyebrow. "Told by who?" he asked. My father hesitated again. And for the first time, he looked embarrassed. "I don't think that matters," he muttered. My husband nodded slowly. "No," he said, "it does matter." My father's face tightened. But he didn't fight back because he couldn't, not today. He took a deep breath and then he said quietly, "One of my former board members mentioned your name." My husband's eyes darkened slightly. And then he smiled, not a warm smile, a dangerous one, like a man who just heard confirmation that his trap worked. My father swallowed. "You see, I'm willing to offer generous compensation," he added quickly. "If you can connect me to the right people, help secure the deal. I can make it worth your time." I watched my father carefully. He wasn't asking anymore. He was bargaining. That's what desperate men do. They start throwing money around like bait. My husband didn't respond. He just walked to the kitchen counter and poured himself coffee. Slowly, like he was doing it on purpose, like he wanted my father to feel every second of waiting. My father stood there awkwardly, hands clasped in front of him like an employee waiting for approval. And I swear, I had never seen my father look so powerless. Finally, my husband took a sip and said, "You disowned your daughter." My father stiffened. His eyes flicked toward me, then back to my husband. "That was personal," my father said quietly. My husband nodded, "And this is personal too." The room went cold. My father's face twitched. He was trying to maintain control, but his mask was slipping. My husband stepped closer. Not aggressively, calmly, like a king approaching someone kneeling. Then he said the words that made my father's entire body freeze. "You don't get to disrespect my wife, and then come to me for help." My father's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "I didn't come here to argue," my father said. My husband smiled slightly. "No," he said, "you came here to beg." That word hit like a slap, beg. My father's eyes flashed with anger for a split second. Then it vanished, because he couldn't afford pride anymore, not with his empire burning. He exhaled slowly and said the unthinkable, "I need this deal." I stared at him, stunned. Because he didn't say, "I want." He didn't say, "I deserve." He didn't say, "I'm offering." He said, "I need." And in my entire life, I had never heard my father admit he needed anyone. My husband nodded as if he was considering it. Then he turned his head slightly toward me, and his voice softened just a little. "Do you want me to help him?" he asked. That's when I realized the real power shift. My husband wasn't asking my father, he was asking me. He was putting the decision in my hands, and my father knew it. My father's face went pale. Because suddenly he wasn't dealing with a poor man. He was dealing with someone who controlled the room without raising his voice. My husband looked back at my father. And in the calmest voice imaginable, he said, "If I help you, you apologize to her, publicly." My father blinked. His pride screamed through his eyes, but he didn't say no because he couldn't. Then my husband added, "And you reinstate her, not as your daughter, as your equal." My father's lips parted slightly. He looked like he wanted to explode, but instead, he lowered his gaze. And he nodded, a slow, humiliating nod. And I swear in that moment, I felt something heal inside me, not because I wanted him back, but because the man who tried to break me was finally forced to kneel. My husband walked toward the door and opened it again. My father looked confused. "What are you doing?" he asked. My husband's eyes were calm. "I'm giving you time," he said. "Go home, think about whether your ego is worth losing everything." My father stood there frozen. Then he whispered, "Please," one word. One quiet word, but it was louder than any speech he ever gave. My husband nodded once. Then he said, "Now you understand." And he closed the door. My father, my untouchable CEO father, was left outside like a stranger. And I stood there shaking, not from fear, but from the realization that karma didn't come screaming. Karma came wearing my husband's calm smile. And for the first time since my wedding day, I knew my father finally understood one thing. He didn't cut me off. He created the very people who could destroy him. Now listen, if you made it this far, I need you to answer one question. Was my father getting what he deserved, or was my husband too harsh? Because me personally, I think karma was just clocking in for work. Smiling face with horns. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you like this video, because it helps the channel more than you think. And subscribe if you love these corporate revenge stories where people underestimate the wrong person. Also comment down below, Team Husband or Team Dad back in fire because the ending of this story. Oh, trust me, it gets even crazier.